Well, to talk about not just Burkina Faso, but this tradition of long-lasting rulers and how it may or may not be coming to an end, let's join Rachel Akidi from BBC Africa. Rachel, you've long experience covering Africa and its autocrats. Do you think there is something symbolic about what's happening in Burkina Faso that might actually have resonance beyond that country's borders?
Yeah, I think Burkina Faso is a first for, these countries that you've just mentioned, who have, who have leaders who've been in power for an average of 30 years. But the issue is whether or not these other countries are likely to follow suit. And I think it's quite unlikely because many of these leaders depend very heavily on the military, on the army. And the army as an institution is fused with the interests of these leaders. So they are able to crack down using force or against any protests that may arise. The other issue is also the opposition's capacity to organize in these countries. Many people, despite all the troubles and problems that they have and the grievances that they have against their leaders, need somebody with leadership to come and mobilize them. They need an issue to rally around. And most of these opposition parties in these countries do not have that strong leadership and do not have strong issues that can bring together all the people around to mobilize against these governments. And I think a few of them have tried it before. Uganda is one of them. They had the walk-to-work protests a few years ago, and that failed.
Do you think there also might be, among some of the civilian populations in these countries, a feeling that if we do get rid of these autocrats, what comes next might be even worse? I mean, I'm just thinking of the lessons of the Arab Spring and removing some of the long-time leaders like Mubarak in Egypt, and one can think of many others too, Gaddafi in Libya, has opened the way to a vacuum, to chaos. And do you think that is a fear in Africa too?
Yeah, I think it's a fear. Like, many times, we speak to a lot of our listeners, and many of them look at Libya, for example, and wonder, what these people were thinking. Initially, they supported the protests, like many people around the world. They supported the Arab Spring. They supported the fact that these people were bold enough to rise up against, these long-serving leaders. But when they look back, they actually believe these countries were a lot better under these strongmen than they are now.
A quick final thought, Rachel. Where do you think the Western powers line up? Are they, in essence, covertly, if not overtly, backing some of these autocrats?
In many places, for example, Burkina Faso, he's a strong ally of, the United States. In Uganda, President Museveni is also a very strong ally of the United States. He's, been helping support, the operations against the Al-Shabaab terrorists in Somalia and in the Horn of Africa. So many of them, yes, in a way, are supported by, Western governments. And that's one of the reasons they actually give. And that's what they use to prolong their stay in power.
Well, we shall watch events in Burkina Faso very closely. Rachel, I thank you for joining me on GM.